Welcome to the Newstrength Way, a podcast made for empowering people to become their strongest selves through movement, education, and connection.
What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the Newstrength Way podcast, episode 3. Today we've got Nathan and myself, and we're going to be talking about when you get bored in training, what to do, and how you can get around that to get yourself back kicking goals and moving forward. So I guess the first thing that comes with the idea of feeling bored in your training is, Nathan, I guess it's like nearly fessing up a little bit. Like I guess it's pretty common when you go through that phase that you feel like there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But in reality, like I know for both of us, and we've trained around each other for a long time, like there's definitely phases that I've felt it, and I can tell with yourself that you would have been in similar states, right?
Yeah, definitely. You've been training a little bit longer than I have now, so I'm sure you've crossed that bridge more times than I have. But yeah, multiple times in my training history, if you'd like to call it, like being very bored and questioning the process and even start to question the end goal in mind. But I think that happens, you can identify it in training, but I think it happens everywhere. If you're trying to strive for something and it's something that's difficult to achieve, there'll become points in time where it's not as stimulating as it used to be, and you start to, I guess, get bored and look for maybe different alternative routes to get to the main goal, or perhaps some people just stop altogether and make a new goal, or it depends on the person, I guess. But I think how people address that dictates how they move forward and get over that hurdle and then end up achieving the goal they really envision to do in the first place.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of the like, I'm not okay, you're not okay, it's okay. Like there's no there's no problem with actually like going through that phase, because it's like, well, I've been at training now for like 11 years or something like that, and so and there's definitely been phases where it's like, oh, this stuff isn't as fun today, like, and sometimes I'd just go, you know what, I'm having a week off. Like other times I'd try to slog it out and put up with it, and it just would suck for a little bit.
Yeah.
But in the end, I'm still here. Like, and that's something that I stand by, is like it's the longevity and like continually turning up. And I think a lot of the things that we're going to cover today is definitely some of the golden nuggets as to how it's helped like myself, yourself go through and be able to be still in the game multiple years down the track and still making progress, still moving towards our goals. So I guess what's some of the things that we find are reasons why like you might have been bored in your training at some point, Nath?
Multiple reasons. I think I'll try and keep ones not too personal to myself, and some that I think that people can apply their own little journeys to. I think environment's a big one.
Yeah.
Like, how are you training? Like when I was training in the dark with no music by myself, trying to slog it out, that eventually got quite boring. Like at the time, I think it provided me some alone time, and when you're training 50 plus people a week, I think time to yourself's nice, but in terms of producing a fun environment to train in and something I look forward to, it withered away quite quickly. So I think environment can dictate a lot, and I think what environment realistically does is you don't have to depend intrinsically on the motivation or the fun or the enjoyment to get to training or to enjoy the process. Like sometimes the enjoyment of the process can just be seeing the people that you're training with, or going to that place you enjoy going to train. Like it doesn't have to be the training itself.
Yeah, like I guess to cut in there, like we've trained in a lot of different environments over time, and like I guess the ones where have always been the most conducive to results have been the ones where you are actively like enjoying turning up and being there.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at like we trained with like Marty and like Kiana, Jacob, those guys that are like national champion weightlifters, and they're just sitting there having a laugh and like hanging out. And like obviously, if anyone knows weightlifting, if you're watching this or listening to us right now, like there's a lot more time resting than there is actually like with your hands on the bar, like in a weightlifting session. So you've got to be pretty chilled out and relaxed, and to be able to get your way through those sessions, because it's not like, I guess, something like a CrossFit style session or a conditioning workout, like you've got sort of the pain to take away your thought process. But something like weightlifting is kind of like grinding it out and resting in between grind, rest, grind, and you just keep on having to slave away. So very much it's like the environment makes those sessions a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. I think a little term I think came from CrossFit, it's like suffering's much better when it's with someone else.
Yeah.
I hear them talk about that a lot, and it's definitely true. Like,
You never hear lone warriors nobody goes to war by themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they go to war with somebody else behind them, and that's what sort of gives them the confidence to go to it. And I think it's very similar in training, is that shared suffering brings people together to a much greater degree than just like going at it alone.
Yeah, and I think with training too is just understanding it's not linear.
Yeah,
I think it's a big one. Like, I think if someone's purely, and that can be with multiple things, that not linear. It doesn't have to be with the goal or with your intensity or with like how you apply yourself. It can definitely be an up and down process. But like you said, being okay with that, and that's okay. And as long as you turn up continually, you'll eventually get there. But don't view it that it has to be a linear path.
Yeah, and I guess that's a pretty common thing. Is like most people feel like they're not like having as much fun with their training when they're not making progress. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like, you could be on the most boring training program in the world, but if you were adding like 5 kilos to your back squat every single week, like, you'd never say no to it. You'd still turn up and do the exact same thing if that was your goal to get stronger, or if your goal was to lose weight and every week you were dropping kilos.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter if it was the most boring program, like, you'd just still turn up and do it because the return's there. And sometimes as you go further and further into your training history or training life cycle, that space in between progress takes a little bit longer, and those dark spots can tend to sort of hang around a little bit longer because you don't see the progress that you were able to see beforehand week after week, right?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it can, like, and sometimes the goal changes or you just write it out. Like, I'm a big believer in just kind of doing it whether you feel like it or not. Except I think the older I get and hopefully wiser, the more I realise it doesn't have to be as bad as you think it has to be too.
Yeah.
Like, those times are going to come, but you don't have to suffer as much as you probably think you have to suffer through it. Like, I used to be like a massive believer in like, it's going to be shit for say 12 weeks when you do this training block or you're doing this, except I don't think I realised it didn't have to be that bad. Like, it was going to suck and the training was going to be hard, and maybe there was a period of time where there felt like there was little to no progress, except your environment can add things that make it more enjoyable, and the focus isn't so much on the training.
Yeah, I guess it's like Bulgarian split squats. You go into that, you know it's going to suck. But if you're doing it with somebody else, you kind of have a joke around about the fact that it's going to suck.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you finish your set with your legs like wobbling around everywhere, and you kind of laugh at each other, and it's good fun. And at the end of it, you don't really want to touch them next week again, but you still come back and do it anyway, because even though it hurt at the time, it was worth it to be around other people and to be into that more stimulating environment, which I guess takes us to the next thing. Like, we actually have a model for optimizing training sessions and environment that we came up with over time, and this is something that we really spent a lot of time trying to study what made the difference between, for us and then for our clients, what was the difference between those good sessions and the good times and the ones that weren't so good, where you could tell that the energy was just down. Nate, do you want to give us like a couple of the pieces of that one there?
Yes, flow was a big one, like how that session itself actually flows through. Like you said with the weightlifting, like there's big rest periods in between, and for some people that just doesn't work well. Some people definitely respond better to continually to be moving, and obviously it's goal dependent, except knowing how the session's flowing. And I guess you could even identify with the weightlifting ones that you mentioned, like the flow for them was the conversations in between.
Yeah, definitely.
So it still flowed. It didn't necessarily flow from exercise to exercise, but it flowed because there was lifting, conversations, a little bit of banter, some progression given by the coach, and then lifting again, and then it would still flow in a sense. Like there was sitting down, but it was still flowing.
Yeah.
Session. Sorry, you go.
Well, and I guess the big thing with like the session flow as well is, it's like, does it bring you in or zone you out?
Yeah.
Like you look at like a lot of conditioning stuff, or like you people who go and run marathons, and the really, really good thing about those guys is they're able to switch out of it. Like it's nearly like an out of body experience. They just go get to work and their brain switches off and doesn't think about everything else going on, because it's just worried about surviving the effort.
Yeah.
Versus something like weightlifting, it's like you can't be, as soon as you finish that snatch, you can't be thinking about the next rep for the next 4 minutes. You might be waiting to take that effort. Like it's a really, like you need to switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off, but still stay in that like consistent flow state where you're still in the session rather than being completely off with the fairies.
Yeah, it's a hard one with lifting because it is start-stop. Like that's something I think I almost missed from back in the day when I was younger. My younger self playing league, like that was a continuous flow state, and I don't think I've found anything since then that gave me that as well. So
I'm also very happy that it switches off though, because like conditioning's hard.
True. Conditioning is hard. But I honestly, the flow state things, it's very interesting. I think that's what brings a good session is a flow state.
And that's what's attractive about it in quite a few different like training models, right? Yeah. Like you see stuff like CrossFit and people get drawn to it. It's like, oh, it's the best thing ever. It's awesome and it's doing a lot of good things and change. But ultimately, it's just because it takes them out of having to think about it. Yeah, they feel like they're working. They feel that sort of out of brain experience, I guess is probably the better word of it.
Yeah.
And the same as like F45 boot camps, whatever it might be. And I think it takes a skill to do it with like weightlifting or just lifting in general, whatever it might be.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a skill to provide that from a coach, and that's really what made us come about it, because Nathan and I are very biased towards lifting, and that's the stuff that we enjoy the most, and that's why we really started to study into this. What made those sessions fun for us still that other people might not have got as much, but they got out of other styles of training, and how could we sort of carry that over and bring it across? So I guess moving on to our next piece, there is the programming.
Yeah, for sure. It has to have some enjoyable aspects, I believe. Like, unless you're trying to be a professional athlete, then it has to be quite rigid and strict because there's certain progressions in place that have to be there. But if you can vary it enough to keep it like psychologically stimulating, but also physically you're adapting to the stimulus, I think that's the key. It's like have enough there that you're adapting. Like I know you, Jake, you love using movement patterns the same so you can build upon them, but just changing little implements to feel like it's new. Like this week it's loaded with a kettlebell and this week it's loaded with a dead ball. When realistically you're still progressing, it's still very much the same movement pattern, but it feels slightly different so it can engage people like ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing that does, that like from a training standpoint, it's creating a bigger context of movement. So I believe that like for most people you need to be generally strong, not just very, very good in one position. And we see that sometimes when we've got people that come in that can deadlift the house down, but you put a dead ball on their shoulder and they can't even do a lunge, with like a 20 kilo dead ball, and they're like, oh, this is shit. This is no good. And it's like, well, dude, maybe there's a problem there if you're deadlifting like 200 kilos.
Yeah, and you can't do a lunge.
A slightly off-centered weight means that you can't lunge anymore. So I think definitely there's a piece to having that as an overall development piece.
Lunge in the 50.
yeah. When we've got girls lunge in the 50 and you're a guy that deadlifts 200 but can't lunge at 200, we've got a problem. But yeah, like that's obviously a piece of it is like getting that. But really, it's that mental stimulation of knowing that it's not the exact same thing as the last week. And I think that's where you can get away with that variation as well. Like you don't want to be going from like the conjugate method is really big on like, all right, well last week was banded box squats, and then this week is like something completely different, like cambered bar chain with reverse bands and that way over the top. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, you're actually getting better changing all that stuff every single week. But if you're changing stuff that's down the chain of importance a little bit more, like you're keeping something like your back squat pretty similar, and then changing your accessory movements and that, it can keep it stimulating, or having some variation within your conditioning as well.
I think like it comes back down, it's like, what's the plan? Like, and how far are you willing to stray just for the sake of variation and enjoyment? Like, and there does have to be a balance there, because the person that completes the plan is the one that gets the result. So if lack of variation makes them stop the plan, then obviously there needs to be more in there. So the periodization in place is irrelevant if it doesn't get completed. So I think it's definitely a fine line between, but I think, bias probably again, but I think we do a pretty good job of minimal effective dose and variation.
Yeah, definitely.
Like just enough to make it seem stimulating, but not too much where people aren't getting what they want.
Yeah, definitely. And even like things like that might be, the movement might stay the same, but performing in a different way mentally. Like, so, okay, well, I want you to really focus on like 6-second eccentrics today on your dips. And all of a sudden that makes the movement seem so much harder just because it engages you into it a little bit more. So one, it's hitting that variation, you know it's going to be different.
Yeah.
But two, it's then just hit onto that flow state a little bit more, because you have to get in when you start doing that, because you can't slow down that movement like that, or you can't be conscious about your tempo mindlessly. So it really hits both of those markers there. By providing that slight bit of variation, we really help with both of those pieces there. And then I guess the last piece of it's the environment.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something that I think, well, once again, we are always biased on this sort of stuff, but that's what we love about it. Like, having the right group of people that you train with, having the right place that you train with. Like, everyone, like, remember the Marty's dodgy warehouse that we went to? That was,
that's the
like,
best.
That was the coolest thing ever. There was these weightlifting, like, world championships, like, posters up all over the walls, and, like, you walked in.
It's like an actual little dungeon.
Yeah. And, like, you got these like old school Eleiko plates that were from like world championships like years ago that you picked up, and all this stuff. Like, none of the equipment looked like it was brand new or flash, but you just walked in and it's kind of like it had this aura that you knew you were getting better.
Yeah.
And I think like we'd normally go down 3-4 weeks at a time, and at the end of that we knew that we walked out, we got better, and we did what we needed to do, and we'd come back in another 6 months time when we were stuck again.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things that really inspired me to focus on this environment of training.
Yeah.
Getting to know those guys and seeing how that worked, and then even like you see like college football teams, like how amped up and like excited they get for each other.
Yeah.
And coming from like us doing like a PT like 1-to-1 setting all the time, that it then it's like, even if you were pumped up, it was like, oh, good stuff, you've done a good lift, and everyone else in the whole gym was just kind of looking and was like, oh, that dude's got some weight on there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's limiting.
Yeah.
Definitely limiting in terms of environment. And I think environments, it's something I've underestimated for sure. Like, if I could go back and change one thing about my like past 6 years of lifting, it would be like, make sure the environment you're lifting in is good. Like, people are pushing you, you're around an environment that you want to be around. Like, just things like that I think could help me achieve things in a more timely manner.
And it brings you up as well. Like, you see somebody else does something, like, and a good example of this is my brother's a little smart ass. If he's listening to this or watching this, you know who you are. But like, this guy literally doesn't train for like 6 months through the soccer season. Turns up, it's like his 3rd week back at the gym. I hit a PR box jump, beat his old best, and he's like, what was that again? What'd you get? Set it up for me. And he goes and beats me by like 2 inches after not training at all. Purely out of, it's like, he's like, well, you done that, I can do better. Having those right people around you in the right place allows that to happen. And probably now I'd like to think that I'm going to go and beat him pretty soon as well, just out of anything possible to one-up him. But that sort of stuff happens from the right people and the right place.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a rising tide floats all boats.
For sure.
Right?
I think that's the crazy thing. We're only talking this morning about like how strong some of the like lighter guys that we have at the gym are getting now. Like, they're literally just starting to put up these numbers, and I was like, I was never doing that weight when I was that light.
No, I was nowhere near that. Like, nowhere near that's crazy. I think it definitely comes down to just what's normal. Like, because the heavier dudes in the gym are lifting, say, 180 to 200 plus on deadlift, so the lighter dudes are like, that's what heavy is, so that's what I'm shooting for. So they just kind of work their way up, and they're like, oh, that's good, I'm doing what the other guys are doing now, but they're like 30 kilos lighter, and they don't really take that into account. But yeah, I've been so impressed over the last few months, especially with some of the athlete guys.
And likewise, it works vice versa with like the bigger guys are trying to keep up in fitness or speed with the smaller guys as well. So it's definitely that it brings everyone up, just being in that positive environment. And I guess, just to wrap up this episode, it really comes down to, if you're bored with your training, you need to change something, and it probably comes down to one of those 3 pieces that we've identified. You need to make sure that your programming is appropriate for what you're after. You need to make sure that the environment's the right place. Like, if you're training in a shitty gym that you don't enjoy being in, probably change gyms. Maybe find a community focused gym like what we do, or the last piece being like, are you actually like showing up in your sessions? And changing the programming, changing the environment can definitely help that happen. But at the end of the day, you have to turn up at the gym ready to make change in yourself and really